Alright guys, it's Chatterbox Reviews, coming at you guys with my review for the Season 2 premiere of Killing Eve. Alright, so Killing Eve is finally back for Season 2, and I was able to see this premiere for Season 2 actually a little bit early. I know it's 8 p.m. Eastern Time tonight in the U.S., and then I think it's a different schedule, right, for the U.K. There. But yeah, BBC America and AMC, I believe it's on at 8 p.m. Eastern Time tonight, and I'm really looking forward to another season of Killing Eve. So I was really happy that I was able to see this premiere a little bit earlier today, and I did a full rewatch of Season 1 this weekend, getting ready, right, for this, the premiere of Season 2, so I'm really glad I did that, by the way, because a lot of this stuff is a lot more fresh in my mind than for this recap, and especially the events of the finale, right? I did forget a lot of the stuff that happened in there, and I didn't watch it when it came out live, but it has been, I think, about 8 or 9 months since I watched Season 1 through, and so yeah, I really suggest, maybe it's too late now, but I really do suggest, kind of going back and watching all the 8 episodes, right, of Season 1, because it really did help me, going into this one. But anyways, I really do enjoy Killing Eve. I don't watch any other show that's at all similar to this one, and I don't really think there's any TV show on right now that's very similar to this one. Obviously, two great lead actresses in Sandra and Jodie Comer, and I mean, just a lot of critical acclaim for the first season, and I really do hope that Season 2 gets that same attention and same buzz, maybe even more. I mean, we're talking about maybe best drama this year or something like that. So I am really looking forward to Season 2. So, of course, in this video, we'll go over a recap, detailed recap of the episode, right? And then I'll get to my rating, favorite character of the episode, and some more overall thoughts of what I think we might see then in Season 2. And also the kind of next time, right, that it plays at the end of the episode gives us a little bit of a preview for next week. And so maybe I'll kind of touch on that stuff as well near the end. But anyways, if you enjoyed the review, please leave a like and consider subscribing to the channel. Would really appreciate it. And as always, I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts on this episode. What do you think of it coming back in Season 2 here from a crazy, insane finale for Season 1? And what do you think of it, and where do you think we're going to be going in Season 2 with this story? So anyways, let's get into the recap then without any further ado. So we start off with this one 30 seconds later, so I really did enjoy that they picked up right where we left off from the Season 1 finale. I do like that when shows kind of, they have a huge, insane finale, and then some shows, you're back, it's been a week, and, just, it's all played out already. But no, it's like, this is something that we got to see, and that's also what made this episode kind of a little bit of a slower paced one, in that they were still trying to kind of answer all of our questions and kind of calm it down, right, from that insane, event of the finale, right, at the very end of the finale. So anyways, so we're 30 seconds later, right? So, of course, in that finale, we know Villanelle, as Eve was coming back into the room, Villanelle was gone, the old woman was there, and said that Villanelle had left, right? So, and it shows that in the previously on as well in the, before the episode. So that's where we're at here. So Eve then is, I guess, walking down the stairs, right, from the apartment, trying to get out of there or try to find Villanelle. And 3 people come dressed as paramedics to the apartment building looking for Villanelle. And so this is where it gets kind of crazy already. So Eve actually hides in a closet in the hallway there. She is able to get away, or at least hide from them in that scene there. And then as the people get up there, they kill the old woman who's the apartment next to Villanelle's. Really crazy, because I don't think she was involved in a lot of this stuff. So very it just shows kind of how ruthless they are and how bad they wanted to get to Villanelle, I guess. So then we see Eve makes it out. She makes it out of the building there, starts walking away, but as she's walking away, we then see a blood handprint of Villanelle's right on the wall, and it's kind of leading towards a gated alleyway right next to the apartment building. So then we kind of switch perspectives here, and we go to Villanelle's perspective, who of course is hiding behind that gate, and she watches on through the gate as the officers, or the 3 guys dressed as the paramedics, they move out, right, and they basically are on the phone. They say that she's not there, right? So then she's, of course, forced to run from them. She's forced to run from her little spot on the gate there, of course, because now she knows they're looking for her, right? They're looking to come and kill her. So obviously, this is kind of the first time that we've seen her in a vulnerable position before, and that's what I really loved about this episode. I mean, you know, especially in that finale, right? She was in a vulnerable moment with Eve, and that's when Eve kind of, that's when she struck, right? And, she stabs her. And in this whole episode, it's like, she is really vulnerable. And this is the first time that we've seen her in that kind of position. So that was really great. So then begins kind of the parallel stories throughout the episode. So, I mean, Eve and Villanelle never actually, like, talk or meet. But in this first little bit, I mean, they're in the same location. They just don't know where each other are, right? And then for the rest of the episode, we're kind of two different kind of stories going for the rest of the episode, following Eve and Villanelle on her kind of journey to the hospital and as you will. So anyways, really did like that little opening there, kind of building the tension, the suspense a little bit, and we know kind of the stakes involved right now with Villanelle and her trying to run away. So then we see Villanelle as she wanders into the streets and she tries getting a car going by, right, kind of sticking out her thumb, right, trying to get a car to stop for her. And after a few passes, she's not having much success. She just dives right into a taxi or a cab, right, driving by. And she basically plays off her stab wound, and she still has quite a few, injuries to her face too. And she plays it off as the driver's fault, right? She dives in front of the car, and then she says that it was the driver who, gave her all these injuries. And so that ends up guilting him basically into driving her to the hospital. She can't go in the ambulance, right? Because we know these people are dressed as paramedics, and that would obviously, they call an ambulance and they show up. It's not going to be very good for Villanelle, right? So basically, he gets to the hospital, then drops her off on the ground. That was kind of a funny little thing. He just leaves her there and drives away. And she's kind of in and out of consciousness here too. Of course, this wound, probably losing a lot of blood as well, and so that's obviously factoring into to this situation. So then we see later she wakes up in the hospital bed, and the doctor tells her that the wound did not pierce any organs and that she will be all right. So kind of damn, right, because we know that Eve finally got the kind of courage. She was able to stab her, and of course Eve doesn't know if she's alive or dead at this point, but we kind of find out here that she is going to live, and that it wasn't anything too serious. So obviously she has lost a lot of blood, but I think that would be probably the worst kind of consequence of this stabbing, right? And she was able to get to the hospital in time, and they were able to fix her up. So Villanelle does survive. I don't think any of us really thought she was gonna die, because it's a whole another season, right? We gotta have a whole another season with Villanelle and Eve. So that was all good. But anyways, so she'll be all right. He says that this kind of injury means he must call the police. That's what the doctor says. Villanelle tells him that it was her husband who was on the police force, right? And so if they call, right, then he's going to find out, and that he's going to try to come and kill her. And so, of course, the doctor buys it, right? Because, of course, we know Villanelle, she has that ability to get to people, right? And a very, very good liar, right? With that kind of psychopathic tendencies there. And so anyway, so the doctor buys it, and he says the next doctor may not, right? The next doctor may actually call the police. And so his shift ends that evening, he says. And so that basically gives Villanelle a timeline on when she should kind of get out of the hospital, right? Because if she's, if she doesn't leave by that time, a new doctor could come in, call the police because of the stab wound, and then, of course, we know that it wouldn't be very good for Villanelle, right? So then we see, meanwhile, Carolyn calls Eve home to London, and she boards the plane back. So this is kind of a long, kind of stretched out little thing of her going to the airport. She ends up hiding the knife in the bathroom there, right? Bloody knife, where she almost goes through security with this bloody knife still. And so that was kind of a an interesting little sequence there. So she hides the knife. She's able to get on the plane, and she comes back, and then she goes on the train as well back home. So then we skip to her arriving at the house as she begins cooking dinner, and Nico arrives, right? I don't think we saw him in the finale, by the way, and so it's been a while since we've seen Nico and their relationship, obviously. the way we left it off is she kind of pushed him, right, slapped him in the face and all this stuff. So not a very good spot right now. And anyway, so he arrives a little bit later to come home, and she finds out that her mind is not right in this scene, as he basically pulls out the chicken from the fridge that she says she was cooking, right? And so, obviously, feeling what she did at this point, something that she's never done before. I mean, and that's kind of the whole episode for Eve, is she's feeling the implications of what she has done. And kind of her obsession with Villanelle is still continuing, because she doesn't know if she's alive or dead, right? It'd be better if she just knew one of them. And so, I think she would probably lean towards her still being alive, obviously, given Villanelle's past and her abilities, right? It would probably be a good prediction that she would still be alive. But then we see her kind of in the bathtub there, really struggling, right? Nico says it's been an hour since you've been in the bathtub, so we obviously understand that she is not in the right place right now, right? Obviously. So, and then also it kind of helps with Carolyn calling her back home, and ends up kind of giving her something to do, maybe distract her from what has happened, right? And that's a little bit later. So then we see after Villanelle convinces the boy Gabriel to steal her an outfit and tag, like a nurse's outfit, right? Villanelle walks out of her room, puts a pair of white shoes on. I love this. She's making a face, right, because the shoes are so bad. Just awesome, right? Jodie Comer does a great job. With these kind of facial expressions and everything. It's so funny, in what is mostly a dark show, but there is a lot of kind of comedic relief, and this is one of those situations. So that was pretty awesome. I just wanted to mention that. And so anyway, she goes to the medicine room, takes a bunch of supplies there, right? And then she ends up taking money from a woman's purse left in a nearby room. She also gives her a false diagnosis of her husband. It says his condition is improving, and so that was kind of a funny sequence as well. With that. So then as she gets back to her bed, she suddenly faints, right? Obviously, she's still feeling those effects. And I did like that they showed that, because up until that point, I thought, really? Like, she's recovering that fast? I mean, I know she's, like, special, and she's really highly trained, but she recovered that fast. So I did like that they kind of put that in, that she actually still is feeling those effects. And I feel as though in the next couple episodes, she might still be feeling those effects of this injury, because it's not like a nothing injury. Like, yeah, she'll be fine and whatever, but she did lose a lot of blood. It's obviously going to hurt for a while, so I think those are things that we'll see in the coming episodes for sure. So then we see Eve finally meets with Carolyn there at the park bench, and she lies to her about Paris. She says that she found Villanelle's apartment, but she never showed. So obviously Eve lying to Carolyn here, not telling her what actually happened, which of course I feel as though Carolyn, she tends to know everything, and so I feel like she is kind of a sneaking suspicion that Eve is lying to her here. But anyway, so Carolyn thinks that she is on the move, and Eve tells her that she has no feelings on where she would be. So Carolyn tends to think that she is still alive, of course, because Eve didn't tell her about the stabbing, right? And Eve says she doesn't know where she is. And I do believe that, right? I think she's being honest there, and she really does have no feeling on where she would be in that case. So then Carolyn says that the MI6 will go to her apartment to check things out, and that Eve is back in her job as circumstances have now changed. So we know that she got fired in episode 8, right, by Carolyn, and that kind of thing disbanded, but now circumstances have changed. So Carolyn takes her to the morgue where the body of an Alistair Peel has been exhumed, and we learn he died of a heart attack, right, with no suspicious circumstances 2 months ago. But his name was written on that note by Nadia that was slid under the door back at the Russian prison, and so I was really wondering if they were going to address that here, because that was kind of a plot hole that they left in season 1, and so I did really like that they kind of included that in this episode, although it didn't end up being too much, in way of this. So of course the note was addressed to Eve, as we saw, right? We didn't see what she wrote inside, but we saw her writing Eve Pilastri, right, on the note there in the prison, obviously before Villanelle killed her, right? So we see that Carolyn says she now thinks that Alistair was murdered, right? It wasn't just a heart attack like they said 2 months ago. The fact is that, he was murdered, or she thinks so. And she also thinks, right, that Villanelle was responsible for murdering him. So Eve put on it as Carolyn believes she has developed a knowledge, or a special knowledge, for Villanelle's killings, right? And then Eve raised the question of checking his feet after he got a pedicure from a woman at the time. So Eve, and we see in this moment too how quick she is to figure that stuff out, and now that she knows Villanelle a little bit more and she knows her background, she's able to deduce those things actually really quickly. And in this scene, she really kind of catches on very fast and saying, oh, well, did you ever have a woman come to the house, right? And she's able to kind of figure that out right away. So it really does prove Carolyn's kind of thoughts true, that she does have a pretty good knowledge on Villanelle and her killings and her kind of background, right? So then we're back at the hospital with Villanelle. She looks at Gabriel's injuries and is honest with him, which nobody else was, right? Which is basically all he wanted. He just wanted someone to be honest with him and tell him how bad it was. So he was in a car accident, and both of his parents perished in the accident, right? And he is still alive, but obviously very severe injuries to his face. He lost an eye and all that stuff, right? So then he gives her pajamas to wear, right? They're way too small for her. But that was kind of a funny little thing going on with just seeing how short they were on her and her legs and all that stuff. So that was kind of a fun one. And she doesn't have any clothes there, right? Or at least kind of her clothes are gone, I guess. And so she's kind of forced to put on these pajamas from Gabriel. And then we see she escapes in them too, so she's still wearing them, which is pretty funny. And in the premiere for next episode, it looks like she's still wearing them, so that's going to be interesting, right? So then we see later Gabriel begins to cry, right? Basically telling her and saying that he knows that he'll have to live the rest of his life with his injuries, right? In the way he looks, and obviously without an eye, right? And she kind of makes some jokes about him wearing an eye patch and all that stuff. And he even says that he wishes he had died in the car accident as well, right? That, then he wouldn't have to live with his injuries for the rest of his life. And so then Villanelle, we see, begins comforting him. And every time, right, he starts crying a little bit, and she starts comforting him. Every time we see this, right, from Villanelle, especially in season 1, throughout season 1, every time it looks like she's caring about somebody, nope, right? Like, no, we're just reminded of that psychopathic tendencies that she has. And then, boom, right? She twists the neck of Gabriel and kills him just like that. So maybe she sees it as putting him out of his misery, right? We don't really know, right? And then after, she tucks him in kind of, and then she takes all of his candy that she asked for before from the doctor who wouldn't give it to her. So an interesting little sequence here. Of course, it seems as though they were kind of befriending each other a little bit, and then she ends up killing him. So I did like that, though. It kind of gave us that reminder of, okay, this is Villanelle, right? Because up to that point, it did seem a little bit unrealistic that she was caring for him and comforting him. And then, of course, we get that moment. So, obviously kind of a sad moment, but it is something that we've come to expect from Villanelle at this point. So we see Villanelle finds a wheelchair, starts wheeling her way out to the front door. Of course, she is with her bag with all the supplies she grabbed before. The hospital now being put on lockdown, and the man says they're waiting for the police to come, right? And so is this for Gabriel? I would assume so, right? I think that's, probably a couple nurses came along, found him, that he was dead, that his neck was broken, or snapped. And so that they probably locked down because of that, and she's able to kind of get out of there right before it all kind of goes down. So he basically, the man lets her wheel herself out the front door for just a moment to get some fresh air. Of course, she plays him like she does pretty much everybody, kind of fake crying a little bit, saying that she just got her diagnosis and all that stuff. So then she goes out the front door for a moment, and he looks back, and she's gone. The wheelchair just kind of spins around, and her hat saying LOL, that was pretty funny. That was, still sitting on the wheelchair little seat, right? So anyways, that was a nice little sequence, and of course, she is gone, right? We knew that she would probably escape sooner than later, so that was really great. So then now we see Eve passes Carolyn's kind of odd test about the Alistair man. I really didn't quite understand. I thought that would be a bigger plot point, especially because it was on the note, and that they would have to figure out, what Alistair, what his role is in the 12 and all that stuff. But it seems as though it's just kind of a little test for Eve to see if she was still kind of dedicated to the job, or she was kind of in the right mind, I guess. And so it seems like she passed it, right? Because she's able to kind of quickly discover what, how he actually died, and that Villanelle was most likely responsible. And so maybe it was just kind of a little test for Carolyn to see that. So that was my kind of thinking of it. Maybe it is something bigger that we'll see recurring with his name and his body, but for right now, it seemed as though it's just kind of a little test. So then Carolyn tells Eve that she can either stay in her job or go into witness protection, right? As Villanelle, if she's alive, right? Because, of course, they don't know quite yet, but, of course, we know she is alive, will try to find her again, Carolyn says. Carolyn says Eve needs to find Villanelle, or needs to find her before she finds Eve, right? So this was really great, again, setting up that whole thing of these two women coming together and, obviously trying to basically, I guess Eve is trying to take her out, but Villanelle is just trying to get closer to her, right? So an interesting little dynamic here. But yeah, I mean, Carolyn's saying you either take your job or you're going to witness protection, right? And, if you take your job back, you can go find her before she finds you, right? And so basically pushing her into that. And then Carolyn says, tell your husband I forced you to do it, right? So kind of funny there. And of course, we know that relationship with Nico not going well as it is. So her taking this job again after she just told him that she quit, right? Just in the beginning of this episode is probably not, is not going to help that situation, right? So then as Nico gets home later, he just tells Eve, be honest with him and to tell him what happened in Paris and, kind of come clean. And so it looks as though she actually is, right? It looks as though for a moment that she actually is going to be honest with him and tell him what happened here. But, of course, she doesn't. All she tells him is that, she bought a bunch of expensive windows from the guy that we heard her on the phone with a little bit earlier. So, anyways, we know that relationship obviously is kind of on the rocks right now, and Eve not willing to tell him what happened. Of course, if she does, right, he's in on it, right, and he has to keep that secret as well. And so, honestly, for the betterment of him and their relationship, it actually is better that Eve doesn't tell him what happened. But, of course, we understand where he's coming from as well. So, and she's never been honest with him, really, about this job ever since Villanelle. So, back to season 1, right? And so that relationship, obviously, I think going to be explored a little bit more. So then as we end the episode off here in Calais, France, I'm not sure. I did see somebody say that's actually pretty close to London, and a few hours away. So we do know that she's getting a little bit closer to London as this episode goes on, right? So Villanelle gets dropped off at a gas station off of a kind of tow truck, it looked like. So she sees a family going into the store there, and she kind of takes her chance, right? So she empties out the trunk of the car onto the sidewalk with all their luggage and all their stuff, right? And she ends up jumping in, right? Jumping in the trunk of the car without them even noticing, right? So it was kind of a funny little sequence here, and of course she's able to hitch a ride then instead of trying to get a cab or a taxi or something like that to go with them. So anyway, so she jumps in the trunk right without them noticing, and they get back in and start driving with her in the trunk. So it's kind of a crazy sequence here. So anyways, Villanelle on her way to London, right? She says, she tells Gabriel in the episode that she's going to London to find her girlfriend, right? And of course we know she definitely has some things to say to Eve, and obviously Eve probably hoping that she's dead, but she obviously is going to want to see her again as well. So then we also see, to end the episode off here, a sequence of Eve laying awake in bed, kind of staring up at the ceiling, very restless, right? Kind of struggling with herself. And then we see the total opposite, right? With Villanelle laying in the trunk smiling, right? She's just kind of waiting, and she's excited to go to London and see Eve again. So, wow, right? That was a really great ending there, right? Just damn, right? Another great season ahead, it looks like, with these two women kind of fighting to meet each other again. With kind of different goals in mind, right, on either side. But we'll have to see how this ends up going with Eve and Villanelle in season 2. So a really great kind of parallel there at the end of the episode. Pretty much really summarizing or really summing up the whole part of this episode where we had kind of parallel situations going on the whole time. But now we know Villanelle is on her way to London, and Eve is back in her job, right, for Carolyn, and she's now back on the trail, right, looking for Villanelle, and we'll have to see how it all goes in the coming episodes. All right, so in terms of a rating for this episode, I'm going to give it a 4.5 out of 5. I thought this was a good episode to set up the season, right? Setting up that parallel with Villanelle and Eve, right? And kind of getting us back into this story, right? And answering the remaining questions that we had from the season finale, and the insane season finale, right? To end season 1. Crazy ending to that one, of course. So I thought it was, ultimately pretty slow paced, kind of preemptive a little bit, but it was kind of needed, right? And in that case, I thought it wasn't, the best episode of the series or anything like that. And by no means do I think it'll be one of the best of season 2, but I do think it was kind of a necessary episode to kind of set things up here. Like I said, we resume 30 seconds after the events of the finale, right? So we have to somehow get these characters kind of out of that situation and back to their respective places. And then throughout the season, again, we can hopefully get up to the point where they meet again and then, see what happens from there. But anyways, really a good episode. A lot of interesting things in here with Villanelle and Eve as well, and seeing Carolyn, that was great again. We didn't get to see Kenny or Elena in this episode, which I was a bit surprised about. Because I thought with the season 2 premiere we would get kind of back to them and meet them again. But yeah, it turns out that we didn't get to see either of them in this episode, but I'm sure we will. It looks like Kenny is in next episode for sure, with the kind of next time that we saw. So we'll see how he factors into this new season as well. And I'm sure we'll probably get a new character, with Constantine being a big character in last season and him being gone, and then Frank, Bill is a little bit farther back, but I feel like they need another character to come in here. So hopefully with season 2 they'll introduce someone new, and we'll hopefully see them kind of maybe join the team or be somehow be in this kind of story with them, because it seems like they're a little bit short on those kind of main characters right now. But again, if we get introduced with Kenny and Elena again in the rest of the season, obviously we'll see how that goes. Elena is a really likable character, so I would really like to see her again, and I thought Kenny was actually a really good character in season 1 as well. So anyways, looking forward to that. And like I said, obviously, right, Villanelle on her way to London, and Eve is obviously now going to be looking for her as well. So really setting up a good dynamic there again with season 1. I mean, that was season 1. The first few episodes was her kind of learning about Villanelle, right? And then once Villanelle kills Bill, everything kind of changes, right, for her. And she says, she wants to kill her with her bare hands, right? In I believe it's episode 4 or 5. But now this episode, it's like, we're right into it, right? And these two want to meet up again right away. And Eve probably wants to kill her, right? So anyways, a really good thing set up here. So those are my thoughts on the episode there. My favorite character for this episode, I gotta go with Villanelle, played by Jodie Comer. She is great. I mentioned it in the recap here, but her facial expressions throughout this one, and just kind of these little moments of comedic relief, was awesome, and I do really believe she's a really great actress in this series. I know Sandra Oh got the kind of Emmy nomination and that, but I don't know. I think they're pretty equal. I mean, I think Jodie Comer, obviously very different roles and different characters that they're portraying, but I think Jodie Comer also does a really great job, and she really does deserve some Emmy recognition, in my opinion, for this year. Obviously if she keeps up the same performance, but it does look like she is. But anyways, Villanelle, we know, again, like I said, her kind of first vulnerable position that she's ever been in this episode, and we'll have to see how that plays in for the rest of the season, where she is. It does look like she's going to be a little bit more vulnerable this season compared to last, right? She's kind of unbeatable last season. And I think we're going to see that more and more. And we're also going to see Eve being a little bit more courageous, a little bit more brave, a little bit more powerful, right, in this episode. So kind of a changing of the dynamics a little bit for that as well. But anyways, that is my review for Killing Eve Season 2, Episode 1. Thank you guys so much for watching this one. Thank you guys so much for the support on the channel. I do really appreciate it. I've been growing a lot lately, so, views, subscribers, comments, likes, and all that stuff. So I really do appreciate that as well. Really do. So anyways, going to be doing week-to-week reviews for Killing Eve for Season 2. So if you're interested in that, please stay tuned and keep coming back, for weekly reviews. But anyways, guys, that is about it. I'm really excited for the rest of Season 2 here. And we'll be back next week, right, for Killing Eve Season 2, Episode 1. And, yeah, I'm really excited. So anyways, again, guys, thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next week.
There's something about the way you are that makes me